We're out of order on the slides, it looks like. Don't worry about it, Celine. We'll do that later. Some time ago, back actually, I think I was in my days as being an intern minister in this congregation over a decade ago, and my partner at the time, Emily, who also is a Unitarian Universalist minister, she was working with Barbara Hamilton Hallway, our minister emerita, who they were setting up the name tag table at our local conference for Unitarian Universalists to get together from all sorts of different congregations. They were in the lobby of a hotel. You've been at this kind of a situation, right? These name tag tables at the lobby of the hotel with people coming in and out. There was a man and his son who came by the table. They were kind of giving it a little bit of a skeptical look, and the man started ushering his son away, and Barbara gave a big smile, and if you know Barbara, you know that big smile that Barbara can give, that sunshine of a smile, and said, "Oh no, we're a church group." And the man got a look on his face, even more terrified, held his son close, and started pacing fast away. And Emily just wanted to leap across the table and say, "No, not that kind of a church group. We're the good kind. Love is the center of our theology." But man, church is weird, isn't it? Church really is weirder and weirder. I love, my favorite quote about church is from that beautiful writer, Annie Dillard. She says, "When people come to church, they should not be handed an order of service with a smile, but should be given hard hats and life preservers." Because church should be a dangerous place, a zone of risk, a place where new birth and new life, where we confront ourselves with who we truly are and who we are being called to become. I need church. I need you all in my life because I struggle in this culture, in this world, to live rooted in my deepest self, in my values. I struggle every day. I have a confession to make. I live my life in so many ways that are at odds with my values. Like the crises, they just keep piling up. The world is ending, and I find myself crashed on my couch with my little screen above my hand, pecking away at the glass to order something that I've convinced myself I really need to be delivered as quickly as humanly possible to my front porch by anonymous drivers burning fossil fuels so I can have the right holder for my toothbrush or whatever it's occurred to me that I need. I don't know how I'm going to make it out of this screen-fueled consumerist trap I've found myself in. But if I do make it out, I think it's going to at least be in part through relationships with people like you, through being part of an emerging culture, an emerging community of people holding faith in a more hopeful vision for how we live our lives on this fragile and magnificent planet. I first heard about those monkey traps that Catherine was talking about in Robert Pirsig's book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, that book, full of all those little gems of wisdom. And he describes it in South Asia, the monkey trappers hollowing out a coconut and putting a little bit of rice in there and chaining the coconut down to the ground. And the monkey, of course, grabs a hold and can't get its hand out. And I think about all the ways that I want to refuse to let something go. The fear that we might have to give up what we know and love, and the way how that keeps us trapped, keeps us resistant to change, which of course is the nature of reality. So, what is your rice? What's my rice? What's What's our rice? What is it that keeps us trapped by refusing to let go? Could be a thing. Sometimes it's a place or a relationship. Sometimes it's an idea, or less tangible, something like safety or control, or even just that simple thought that that's how we've always done things. I think the moment that we're living in, the biblical archetype for the kind of moments that have happened in human history that mirror ours, is the destruction of the temple. This is the image that recurs in those old stories where the center of community life, the temple that has been built to hold the center, is destroyed. And in that process, the people must grieve and wail and eventually rebuild. But building the new temple requires a tremendous letting go of the way things have been. I think one of the things that's happening right now is that we are letting go of what was actually an underlying political consensus in our country and much of the developed world for shorthand, neoliberalism. The sort of secular rationalist idea that the free marketplace of ideas would lead to the best outcomes for all of humanity. And I hear in some of the resistance to what's happening right now an attempt to return to that status quo, to save those institutions that are being plundered and destroyed. And I sadly think that the efforts to save the old status quo will fail because the old status quo has been morally bankrupt for some time. But of course it's tempting in these times. Some people call them VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. These volatile times, of course we would seek to find safety in the old familiar. The fragile coalition that's swept into power in our country is offering safety through the ugly old familiar of patriarchy. Whether that's the religious patriarchy of Christian nationalism or the corporate tech bro patriarchy, so perfectly symbolized by Musk and his chainsaw, or the patriarchy of a militaristic strongman politics. It's an ugly return to an old familiar that they are telling us will bring safety in these volatile, uncertain times. I think that the movement that will take hold and offer a better story to believe in is the globally emerging religiosity that places the planet at the center of its holy iconography, that names our radical interdependence as the center of its moral framework. This devotional religiosity to the planet, which is an emerging quality in every religious and philosophical tradition around the world. This new temple that is earth-centered and justice-shaped, that holds the little blue-green orb against the vast blackness of uninhabitable space all around us as the central image of our profound interdependence. In this emergence through these volatile, uncertain times, we are going to have to lean into our dependence on one another. That's what this weird thing called church is actually about. That's what endures, even as new ways of doing it will emerge. I love church. I love church because when I was a teenager, we could sit up in the balcony and watch the service together and pass notes and giggle and feel our differentness, but still belong, still be part of the village. I love church because Kitty was my secret buddy when I was 7 years old. And she brought me little gifts each week, and it was a mystery who she was. And I brought her little gifts, and human by human, I learned what it means to be part of an extended network of trust. I love church because of the way people treated Brian, who always showed up with crumbs in his beard and asking for BART tickets, because I learned something about what it means to love humanity. I love church because Bob took me out for pie one time when I was feeling really low and shared his favorite grace with me: let's eat again real soon. I love church because at that time our ministers took us up to the Freestone retreat for a coming-of-age retreat. And we all lay in a wheel with our heads toward the center of the circle to sleep, and the reality of the wild, mysterious, mystical journey of life felt palpable among us. I love church because I could always sit there and cry on a Sunday morning, and there was nothing to be ashamed of. Emily, she wanted to jump across that table and tell that dad and his son about how different our tradition is, because even as church has become weirder and religious affiliation has declined, the spiritual, the community needs of people persist. We all need space and time and support to nurture our connection to ourselves and to people similar and different than us. We need a place to rest, to draw renewal from the larger web of life that connects us all. Places where the whole self, where the soul is welcome, are few and far between. Digital life has promised so much connectivity, but instead given us more profound loneliness than our species have ever known. Places and practices that foster deep reflection and relationship are essential to a healthy, functional society. As religion has failed to meet the needs of people in our country, its role in nurturing the capacities necessary for democracy has diminished, and the temple has collapsed. And those who would bring back a familiar old, especially those with that fundamentalist worldview, they look at the world and they see the suffering and the injustice and the violence, and they say this comes from sin or evil, from weakness. As we look at the world and we see that suffering, that injustice, and that violence, and we say it stems instead from disconnection. People are disconnected from one another, from their own innate goodness, from the larger relationship we all have to life. The purpose of our religious community is help heal this disconnection with an enduring faith in connection. Connection allows us to discover our shared struggles and dreams and collectively build power to create more beauty and love and justice in the world. We are inheritors of a tradition that boldly proclaims we need not think alike to love alike. We have practice in hearing one another's stories. We know the power of sitting with one another during times of loss and grief. We know the joy of celebrating new and renewed life. We know that church need not be a scary word, not something to shield our children from. And I think about who's responsible for this culture in which people leave religion in droves, and it's easy on the one hand to point the finger at those coercive religions that have collaborated with empire and given the word a bitter taste. It's easy to blame fundamentalists for making religion synonymous with conservative. It's easy to blame the Catholic Church for tracing indelible neural pathways between religion and structures of domination and hierarchy. I know there's some truth there, yet I think it's harder and maybe more important to acknowledge our own shortcomings. Because I think too often liberal religion has failed in not proclaiming our way of being religious as essential to our lives. Too often, Unitarian Universalism has failed in defining our mission by talking about all the ways we're not like those other traditions. Too often, we have failed in seeding the language of the sacred, trying to pass as secular, reducing worship to lecture, refusing to engage with ancient wisdom in sacred text and spiritual practice. Too often, we've failed in cultivating in our children a sense of religious identity. And this is not a struggle any of us can figure out alone. Because paradoxically, we're both too religious and not religious enough. Because let's face it, while church will continue working for a lot of good folks, there's plenty of others who are lonely out there who could use a shot of our life-giving theology, who would appreciate the quality of community that we know how to cultivate, who already resonate with our values, but who will never show up here simply because we're a church. And I know some folks think that just changing our name would solve the problem. But if you get together on Sunday morning and sing hymns and listen to a sermon and play the organ and sit in pews, well, if it quacks like a duck. But we are a living tradition. We're a living tradition who has always changed with the times, and we continue to change and allow ourselves to be changed by the demands of what is emerging among us. One of the challenges of change, I think one of the reasons we cling so tightly to the rice, is that we can't know which changes are for the best and which might be a step in the wrong direction before we try them. With any real change, we cannot be certain of the outcome. We have to risk changing anyway, not knowing if we're making the right decision or not. And so I'm scared, I have to admit, of this new religiosity I think has to emerge. I'm scared of what it might ask of me, what sacrifice, what change, what loss, what I will have to let go of to participate in it. Did you see the article in the New York Times, it was a few weeks ago, about Grace Cathedral in the city? It's a beautiful cathedral. They've made a major change. They've embraced what they're calling Grace Arts, and they are using their space to host all sorts of arts events and yoga classes, and the membership now of Grace Arts exceeds by quite a few people the membership of Grace Cathedral. And yet, what is happening is part of this emerging moment of new religiosity, a return to the sensuality that was banished by many Protestants in the Reformation, a return literally to the senses, to the body. So I believe that the turn required for this religious emergence of our time is the trust, not in that Reformation moment when Luther talked about sola scriptura, only authority in the scripture, not sola scriptura, but authority instead in somata, in the collective body, in our own bodily knowing and connection to the sacred, and the bodily knowing that speaks through being part of a larger body. Rebuilding the temple never starts with brick and mortar, but with breath and beating hearts. First, we rebuild the temple in our own bodies, our own spiritual lives, before any structure can be formed. If you're feeling on the brink these days, if everything is driving you just to the edge, now is a great time to double down on spiritual practice or find one for the first time, perhaps. It can be as simple as taking that deeper breath, anchoring your week with Sunday morning sitting in a pew and singing hymns near other bodies, by the way, neuroscience is telling us really good for our nervous systems. Saying grace before a meal, slowing down enough to savor the shapes and colors of the sky. It can be a book group or making music or writing or whatever it is that brings you that connection to a deeper current in your life. In the dark times, will there also be singing? The German playwright Bertolt Brecht asked. In the dark times, will there also be singing? Yes. Yes, and there will also be singing about the dark times. Come what may, here we will sing, body to body, and together live our way into a new temple whose shape we cannot yet imagine, yet is already emerging in our breath and bones. May it be so, and amen.